And we're back at it again, Under Pressure. I'm your host, Carmine Gellinella, and I'm with a fellow Italian. I'm with Eddie Pozzuoli, right?
Pozzuoli.
I knew I was going to mess that up. So you are owner and managing partner of Prezzo, one of my favorite spots here in Palm Beach Gardens, but you do so much more. And I want you to tell my audience a little bit about yourself. What makes Eddie tick?
What makes me tick? There's a lot that makes me tick. I grew up in South Florida, born and raised, worked in restaurants from when I was a kid and, 14, 15 years old, kind of dabbled back of house, front of house through high school, and then carried that through college, whether it be fine dining, nightlife, bottle service, kind of a little bit of everything, and just kind of ended up back into my roots of having restaurants despite 2 degrees in finance and economics and whatnot. And, it's just always been like the social aspect and the meeting people and, the upbeat, ever changing environment that like has kind of always made me gravitate towards that.
So when you had those 2 degrees, right, did your parents go, all right, we have a son that's got 2 amazing degrees. He's going to do something with those degrees. And then you're like, hey, by the way, I want to open up some restaurants.
It's hard to say. I mean, they were proud kind of regardless.
Okay.
They knew that, whatever the situation would be, they gave me enough tools as I was growing up to like make sure I would land on my own feet regardless of whatever the situation was. So, the reason we ended up getting into the first one was because my father owned this piece of real estate in Coral Springs that had a restaurant on the first floor. And after 8 different tenants, he decided to say, you know what, screw it. I'm going to take a shot at opening a restaurant. And that was when I was in college. And, he's like, this is what I'm going to do, Eddie. I'm like, oh, good luck. I heard restaurants suck. Like I'm working in them like it. And it's not going to be fun. And, despite like the adversity, this was like 2007. So like right in the middle of the economic downturn. Yeah. He opened up a fine dining Italian restaurant because, he's like, I want to do like, if I'm going to do something, like I want to do something that I can take pride in. I would like to go in and just really do something that's like special for the community. So despite all that, he ended up creating a fairly successful, like small mom and pop restaurant over the next 5 years.
And did he learn from all the previous tenants? Because you said it was a restaurant for the previous 8 tenants. So 8 different ideas, 8 different concepts, but the same outcome.
That space, and going back even more than that. He bought the building in like 96, so there was 8 tenants from 96 to 07. Prior to that, it was more restaurants. So like it's always been kind of like a space that wasn't necessarily like prime location for a restaurant.
Almost like a black hole.
Yeah, exactly. But he's like, you keep it simple. If you treat people right, you put out a good product and you're present and, you do the right thing by people, eventually it'll catch on enough. And fortunately, because of the ownership of the building, you can take a little bit extra time in developing relationships and building the business. Whereas, you go into a new construction place at a mall or, somewhere new, you're paying rent day one potentially. And you're like, full boat in rent and the landlord's not messing around. So it makes it a lot harder for you to build a true business rather than just saying, throwing proverbial shit against the wall and seeing what sticks because you need to make money day one.
And that is the scary thing that I found out about restaurants is you, for the most part, need to make money day one because like you said, the landlords and it's tough. It's people need to know about your place. You need to provide a good product and a reason for them to come back again and again and again. And that has to, you could speak to that. That's got to be the toughest part.
Yeah. And not only do you have to make sure their experience is good one time, but they've got to come back like 4 or 5 times before that they're going to be a regular or they're going to come to see you once every couple months. So those first few months of being open is like super, super important to make sure everybody leaves with a smile on their face because you need to make them happy and you need to get them out of their normal groove. People are very habitual. So they have that place they go to every Monday or Tuesday for happy hour, Wednesday, whatever day it is, like this is always my place I go. And for you to like chisel away and make, make them deviate from their habits and
Yeah.
come to yours. Like it takes a
It's
lot of
huge.
effort and a lot of time and a lot of working to get them to build up that trust to say, I'm no longer going to go to this place, but I'm going to go to this place, whether it be Prezzo or any of the other restaurants.
And then the big thing is you have to hope that they can trust you, that if they do have maybe not the greatest night there, that they can trust you that it's maybe just a one-time thing. Things do happen because once again, when you deviate from a routine, people are very stubborn. All of a sudden they'll be like, well, I guess this is not for me as well. Instead of just seeing the factors that have played a part in why the night maybe didn't go as they originally planned.
Exactly. Hoping they look at things with in that objective kind of view, not just saying, oh, I gave them one shot, I'm not coming back, is, obviously always what we hope for, but it's not really ever what occurs. So it just puts that much more pressure for performance on us, on the team and all the way down the line. So it's a lot to ask for from a team.
Yeah.
It's a lot for us as, anytime we open a new business and we try to kind of set that record with the team from day one of training. Like, listen, this is the Super Bowl. Every day we're going into the Super Bowl. You can't look at yesterday. You got to look at today. And every day is another game that you need to win. And we need to figure out how to come up on top of.
And I that's why I'm fortunate that two of my careers, I had a career in hospitality and then radio and media. It's the job that no matter what, you have to be on. Because someone's going to dinner to have an experience. If you're in a crappy mood, if you're going through a breakup, that's unfortunate. Things in life happen, but your table doesn't care about that. They don't want to see you moping, or they don't want to see like, oh, I'm just going through some stuff. I'll get your drink when I can. Or on radio, they use me as an escape. Hopefully the same thing with the podcast. If I'm over here like, poor me, things are just rough, they're not going to listen. They're listening to me because they want that escape. And I like how you said the Super Bowl, because it's like, there might not be a tomorrow if we mess up today.
Of course. It's the stakes are always high, and I don't mean steaks, S-T-E-A-K. I mean actual steaks.
You're going to get me hungry though.
Yeah. Whether it's making sure that our team makes enough money to support their family, or whether we, making sure we're advertising right to get the guests in the door. Like there's just so many moving parts to it that, we can spend 16 different podcasts going through the opening experience of a restaurant and like all the different things we look at, whether it be the construction side, the training side, the menu development side, the procurement side. Like there's just so many moving parts to it that don't get spoken about, I guess.
And I think to speak to your success is you started out as a busboy, so you've seen it all, a little bit of everything. You've seen front of house, back of house. I talked to Kyle G before, and I said it's two different worlds that people don't understand in the restaurant, front of house and back of house.
Oh yeah.
Might as well just be two different countries, but you still have to find that synergy. You have to find a way to make it all coexist and work, that everybody's on the same page. And that's probably, I'm assuming, the most difficult thing to do.
It is very hard, but it all starts with your culture. If you've got that team mentality and that team culture, regardless of, how many different countries you have within the restaurant, because it's not just two countries. We've got people from everywhere working in the front of house, back of house. So I didn't even think the type of people too. I was just saying as if they're just two separate entities. Yeah. So, no, but it's a lot. But like what we emphasize, and it starts on day one with them, is that team culture and that mentality of like, we're here to make sure the guest leaves happy. And if you can drive that point home from day one, they're not going to know anything different with you. There's other restaurants that might take the tact of like, training is just, they're just here to train. And after they're done training, they'll go on the floor and they don't care what the guest experience is like. It's just, they're serving the next person and there's going to be somebody right behind them. But with our company, everybody needs to know, like from dishwasher to line cook to server to bartender to host, it's all about the guest experience. If the guests don't come in the door and the guest doesn't have a good meal,
nobody has a job.
Exactly.
At the end of the day, you're doing something different. And I want to talk about your dad's place, his first spot. You said it was a little like mom and pop place. When did he say, hey, Eddie, I want you to be part of this? Or this was something that you're like, hey, Dad, let me help you out any way I can?
It was a little bit of both. So I had graduated college and I was working at Blue Martini, actually, in Naples.
Okay. How many Blue Martinis were there? I know there was one in City Place for a time. There was one in Boca, I believe. And then
At the time,
Naples.
I want to say there was 7.
Okay, I didn't even think it was that. I thought maybe it was
between
4 or
like
5.
Orlando, Tampa, Naples, and a couple out of state, Vegas, and the company was like thriving when we were there. We had opened the Naples store. That was 2009 when I was still in college, and the place was just like printing cash. I mean, I started there as a busser too, and I worked my way up all the way to AGM. And, I saw everything there, and the place was like a well-oiled machine. Every night was busy. It was wild. And like, I learned a ton about not only the guest experience side with the high volume, but the managerial and and handling the drunk clientele and the bottle service and this and that. Like, there's so many different variables of that business that I learned a lot out of. So fast forward, I graduate college, and my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, her and I were both working there. And we both met in school, but we ended up getting jobs at Blue Martini together.
Everybody meets in the restaurant industry. Everyone's like, you'll find your future person if you stay there long enough.
So, we met in college. However, like me
even better. That's
we did,
awesome.
me and a couple of my buddies got jobs at Blue, and her girlfriends, who we all kind of had mutual friends with, all got jobs at Blue. So like, it was just kind of like a natural thing. So we've worked together from like pretty much like month 1 of dating. And
so if it works, then you knew it was going to work long term.
Exactly.
It's like, I'm with you almost 24/7.
So
maybe we can make this official.
It's, and seeing it on the other side, I'm like, I never see couples work out that work together that, at any of the restaurants. Like, it's few and far that like people are able to make that happen.
It's usually people just, I truly believe like after a while, you're just around somebody so much. You're like, this person all of a sudden looks more attractive than they did. You hook up and then it's like, why am I doing that? And then it's awkward at work and stuff. So you're fortunate.
Yeah, it turns into a argument. Then the manager's got to choose who stays, who goes. Because
all of a sudden you got to manipulate the schedule just to accommodate 2 people that are going through something. It's like, that's not how you operate a successful business.
And then he or she decides to go after somebody else at that store. And you're like, messy. Okay, what's going to happen now? It's going to turn into like, and it's hard because you want to keep that like cohesive like environment where everybody's like mingling and like, if they go out for drinks after work, like that's fine. Like, managers never like coexist, but like, the hourlies and whatnot, like you want them to like kind of have that relationship, because that creates the best like team environment. But then it's a delicate line, because if they start crossing it and they start, whether it be hooking up or dating or this or that, then it can turn into Vanderpump Rules or, one of those TV shows.
But if the cameras aren't rolling, you're not making money off of that.
Exactly.
So you don't need that drama. And then the other thing, it's just like, unfortunately, not everyone who works at your restaurant is going to consider themselves a professional and handle themselves that way. It doesn't mean they're going to be a bad employee, but to them, it's like, whatever. Like, I don't care if we have a disagreement. It's like, I don't care enough. It's not like you in the position of an owner. It's like, no, get your shit together. You have to keep it copacetic. It's like, I don't need your drama. Just how I said before, they don't care if you're having a breakup. And if you're having a breakup in real time in the restaurant, it's like, that can get messy.
It gets very messy. And the one thing is, the main driver for all of it is money. If they're earning a significant amount of money working at the restaurant, they're going to make sure that they don't commingle relationships and screw up the gravy train, or whatever you want to call it. So that's the key, is you always want to make sure your team makes as much money as possible, or more money than the next place, because then it almost like is a self-manager. It's like, okay, I make $350 a night this place, $400 a night, whatever that number is. Like, if I can, I can't screw this up. Otherwise I'm gonna have to go start somewhere else where it's maybe only $150 or $200 a night. So like, that's a big driver for me to make sure, like, okay, are we scheduling the right amount of people? Are we making sure they're making the money? Like, it's extremely important for us to make sure everybody's doing well with us.
That is a difficult thing, I'd imagine, because you want everybody on your staff to make money. But if you're understaffed, that could be one of the most detrimental things ever, because not only could your servers end up in the weeds, even if they're making good money, but the customers are just frustrated. And then at the same time, if you have maybe an extra server or 2, then it's like, oh, we're not making money. But it's like, listen, at the end of the day, it's all going to work out. We'd rather customers come in and feel like there's 8 servers serving their table as opposed to I haven't seen my server in 15, 20 minutes. Like
it's a delicate balance. And, during season, it's a little bit easier because you kind of know like every night's going to be a busy night. Where it gets difficult is the build up to season and the kind of decline after season. Cause there can be one Monday where you do like 100 covers. And then the next Monday, you're like 250. And you're like, what the fuck just happened? Like why? Like, and like you can take whatever historical data you want, the Easter fell on this date, Passover fell on this date, Mother's Day is this date, like, and you can blame it on anything.
It's a full moon tonight. You start doing everything. He's like, is Mercury in retrograde? Like there's something up here.
You're all over the place. And at the end of the day, like, sometimes shit happens randomly. There's a soccer tournament at the fields down the street.
100%. It's like a kid's youth tournament. It's like, what is going on?
And then you get killed for lunch. Like, so projecting and really trying to take all of that stuff into consideration is like really, really important. But sometimes you get like that paralysis by analysis because like there's just so many variables. You're like, you throw your hands up and you're like, I don't know what the fuck to do.
I like how we just went on a whole thing So Blue Martini, and then you getting into your pop's place.
All right. So graduate college, still at Blue, making fuck you money at 21, 22 years old.
And real quick, because one last thing about the relationship, as you were progressing from Buster all the way up and your girlfriend, how did she progress career-wise?
She started as a host there.
Hostess?
Got into serving, then bartending, and she actually became the bookkeeper.
Okay, because I was going to say, once you become top dog, all of a sudden it'll be like, oh, look, he's giving her, special treatment. It's like, they came in day one as a couple. It's like, there's no special treatment here.
So it was funny because she started bartending, and I was bar backing at the time, and the manager he hated me because, funny enough, my roommate was banging his ex-girlfriend. And he
I did not expect that. That's awesome.
I don't know. Is this G-rated or what?
No, we said fuck, we said shit, we're good. I'm going to clip that and put that on Instagram. Don't you worry.
So he just like had it out for me. And, despite like multiple talks with the GM and this and that, like this guy fucking hated me. And
what a petty bitch.
I'm bar backing and I'm like trying to get my way to bartender. And this guy is just keeping me down because my roommate was. So, he thinks it's funny. He goes, my wife or girlfriend at the time, she was serving. He's like, I'm going to make you a bartender. He makes her, she never poured a bottle in her life, and he makes her a bartender. He puts her on like the busiest bar and she's amazing at what she does. So she figured it out day one and like became phenomenal at what she did. But like, he
did it out of spite. He is a weasel. This is exactly the opposite stuff we're talking about, folks. You don't want someone like that in your restaurant.
And it showed me, on the employee side, like what kind of manager, I want to be. And it showed everybody around, what kind of manager he was, because like, everybody's a family there. Like everybody sees what's going on. And obviously I was happy for her. I taught her how to pour bottles and like we'd take home empty bottles every night and pour them in the sink for her and like, get her comfortable with that stuff. And
it'd be funny if when someone ordered her drink, she would just disappear behind the bar. You're the one making it, give it to her, and she pulls it back out. There you go.
So, there was a couple weeks of that and I forget what happened, but he ended up getting shit canned for something.
Karma. That's called karma.
And then, at that point, the GM was like, okay, you're going to be a bartender. Then eventually I became his AGM and was handling the restaurant when he wasn't there. And this is all at the age of like 22, 23. So like right at graduating college, you're
on top of the world. You're like,
business
easy.
doing $8 million a year in booze, places like printing cash. And then I would bartend a couple days a week and make $800-900 a night, like whatever it was, plus a salary. I'm like, this is like,
it's great. $800 a night is great money now.
It was wild.
And then back then,
and at 22, we couldn't ask for more. Like, we're like, oh, where do we want to go this week? Like, we'll go to Vegas or we'll go here.
As you said, fuck you money. And it's like we can do whatever we want.
So for me to get an internship in college, it just kind of steered me away from it because I'm like, oh, what the fuck am I going to do? Get a paid non-paid internship, or am I going to make like $2,500 a week with my girlfriend? We're like,
you have a degree in finance. This seems like a financially more beneficial situation. So, boom, there you go. There's a degree. So we stayed
there. After I graduated, she was still in college, so we stayed there for a while. And the restaurant home, which was over here, was doing okay. And my dad, who used to be a drummer, like as he was growing up back in the day, was like, well, I saw like Blue Martini's doing really well. Like we have another 3,000 square feet of space in the building where his mortgage office was, because he was originally a mortgage broker. He's like, why don't I move that office upstairs? Why don't I add a bar and add a little stage and like expand the restaurant to be not this mom and pop place, but add liquor and add all these things to make it a real operation. And I'm like, let's talk about it and let's see if that can become a reality. Because I've learned so much over the past few years, and I never worked with my dad. And I know just putting up Christmas lights with him, I was like, I never want to work with him.
This could be something that's not going to work for the both of us.
So it was like a big leap. And eventually we came to an agreement, and I moved home. And Christina graduated college, and she moved home and was working at Blue Martini Brickell and Fort Lauderdale while we were building out this whole lounge side, what we called it. And, fast forward, we opened that in like December 2012. And that's kind of what kind of took my leap from like manager into like becoming an owner of a restaurant.
And when it comes to liquor license, because I've never asked this question, what are the qualifications for you to obtain a liquor license? Does it have to be a certain amount of square footage in your place? And
so there's a couple ways you can attack it. Back then, the requirement was 4,000 square feet and 200 seats.
Okay.
Which then you can get what they call a SRX license, which is like a special restaurant exemption, where if you serve 51% food, 49% alcohol, you don't have to pay this huge nut up front, the $200,000 that you hear about liquor license costing. If you want what they call a quota license, which is what a lot of the smaller restaurants and bars, mainly like just bars, will get, that's where you got to pay it like a taxi cab medallion, where it's based on the market. Could be 150 grand, could be 300 grand, and there's only a certain amount of those issued per county.
Okay. And that's yours to do whatever you wish with, right? So
it has to be attached to an address. So if you decide to take it and move it, it's got to be done the right way, but that's an asset to the business. So if you want to turn around and sell the liquor license, you can do that.
And is it easier to go from one person to another to get that liquor license and go through the government? So is that the route a lot of people would go, or it's
no? It all still has to go through the government.
Okay.
You've got it. The DBPR is pretty strict with how they issue liquor licenses.
So you can't just give me one right now.
No, down to like fingerprinting. Even with the special restaurant exemption license, I've got my fingerprints attached to every single liquor license I'm on. They do a full background check. They do full financial check on you. Like
insurance probably goes up as well, right?
Insurance is for the restaurants is purely based on your sales mix.
Okay.
So every year we get an audit from our insurance company, and they see, what percentage of food, what percentage of alcohol did you sell, and they base whatever additional premium you owe them on that sales mix. So like I have to, at the beginning of every year, be like, okay, what am I going to do in revenues? And I come to an idea where I'm at with revenues, like how much of that's going to be alcohol, what's going to be food. And like, you never want to overestimate, because insurance, they don't give you your money back. Yeah. They just bill you more when they look at your audit.
As Chris Rock said, insurance is in case shit happens.
Yeah.
So they're hoping nothing happens and they just take your money.
Exactly. So like, when I do an audit, I try to get close, but I don't ever want to project more than what I'm going to do, because then that's just money that's thrown up in thin air. So every year we get the audit, we get it back, and they say, you did a little bit more sales than you projected. You owe us another 15 grand. And it's like you're striking them a check for a year that you already went through that you didn't get sued for or didn't have an issue. You still have to write them a check.
I know, it's just absurd. But shout out to the insurance companies. If you want to be a sponsor of Under Pressure, I would love it as well.
Yeah,
I would like you to give me money for once.
They got plenty of cash. So
you started running your Pops restaurant more towards that ownership role. So at what point did you go, I'm really good at what I'm doing. Everywhere I've gone so far, it's time to expand. Let me think bigger.
So fast forward, let's see, through 2017, we built the restaurant up from doing like, as a mom and pop, it was doing like 1.6 million a year in revenue. Just beer and wine, food, small place and
that's great though, right?
Yeah. I mean for what it was It was,
and that's profit 1.6.
no, that's just revenue.
Okay.
For what it was, no salary manager, very like, very mom and poppy, and it made great money. Fast forward, we now have a restaurant that's doing, that restaurant in 2017 is doing somewhere around $4.5 million a year. So we built the restaurant up from, 1.6 to 4.5. And I'm like, man, this is a good business. But the way my dad was looking at the business and his partners were looking at the business is like, it's almost like more like we're enjoying this and we're coming out, and like it was more just like enjoy the business than less like, how do we take this and how do we scale this to the next one, or, kind of keep growing. And we're still young. So we're like, where's the next step? Because we don't want to be stuck in this single location.
That's key what you said, being young too, because your pops, he's probably comfortable. He's like, you know what, this worked out maybe better than I even imagined.
Yeah.
Why am I going to try to reinvent the wheel? Let me just go with this. I'm making an income and I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah, everybody was making their money. It was good. Like there was nothing, the restaurant was doing fantastic. Revenues were great, the whole 9 yards. And like, it was perfect, for what it was. But Christina and I were like, well, what's the next step for us? Because we're working here, 6 days a week. We're only open 6 days a week. So we closed Mondays there. We're working here 6 days a week. We were married at the time. We got married in 2014. So we were married. We're ready to have a kid. And, at that point we're like, okay, how do we build ourselves like out of this business and start looking into the next thing? And unfortunately for that business, the way it was being operated at the time, there wasn't a way for us to build ourselves out of the day to day. And that's when we made the call and we said, you know what, we need to put this for sale, regardless of how successful it is. We'll sell it for a multiple, which is great. And we'll land on our feet one way or the other with whatever the next thing is. And that's kind of what took us from selling that one unit to then finding the next thing for us and kind of building from there.
And what was that next thing?
So we sold, that restaurant was called Tavolino's. We sold that in June of 2019. We can have a complete podcast about that sale and everything later. And in August, we went away we went on vacation with our friends, had a blast, and like we're like, okay, what's next? We're home. We had a 1-year-old at the time. And we're like, what are we going to do? Like what business do you want to start? Like do we want to do something in food and beverage? Do we want to do something different? Like we could have taken things a million different ways. And one of my managers that worked for me at the time had left the old restaurant, got a new job at Max's Grill in Meisner Park.
It's a good spot.
Yeah. And the owner at the time there, who eventually became my partner, one of my partners, had asked him like, hey, what is Eddie doing? Because everybody kind of still everybody knows each other. And he's
it's a small world.
Yeah.
We talked about that before we started the podcast today.
And he's like, what's Eddie doing? Like he, and he's like, I don't really know. He's kind of just like seeing what the next thing is. He's like, well, have him call me. And that's how we come to find out that Prezzo and Boca was for sale. And so I met with them and I'm like, I don't want to be in Boca. Like my goal was like, if we do another restaurant, I want to kind of stay away from Boca. I heard Boca is very difficult to do business in, and it's a difficult clientele and the whole 9 yards. So I'm like, I don't really want to be in Boca. So I meet him. We hit it off, within the first hour of meeting, and
it's one of those things,
yeah,
you knew right there.
And I'm like, okay, so let me take a step back and look at this. There's this restaurant that's for sale. It was called Prezzo. It was a very popular brand back in the 90s, actually, which there was multiple locations back then and all that kind of stuff. And he had built it up back then. So he reopened it in 2018 and it just wasn't doing what it needed to do. And I'm sitting there and it's a lunch and there's like 150 people there for lunch because we're right next to Office Depot's headquarters where there's every day there's 2,000 people working there. I'm like, for a lunch to be this busy, I know I can make dinner busy. Like It's not even a guess.
So that's what it was. It was just dinner was falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
So lunch was always packed, and then dinner was ghost
yeah.
town.
You know, at 7 o'clock, it place is empty, but at 5 o'clock, it's full, but with clientele looking for BOGO and this and that. And that's never a good recipe for a successful restaurant. It might help you with cash flow issues and, you know, for a little time, but at the end, at the end of the day,
it's not sustainable.
The loyalty is to the price. It's not to the place for that kind of clientele. So we saw that and we're like, we can redirect this. Like, dinner in Boca should be, as long as you put out a good product, you should be able to nail it. So the lunch has always been the hardest thing. I'm like, but the lunch is in the bag here. So this is like fantastic. So I'm like, you know what? Why don't we buy 50% of the business and the controlling interest of this operation? And that's kind of where we stepped into Prezzo, which happened in January 2020, 3 months before COVID.
Just in time to start something like that.
Yeah. So that all happened, but we, the first couple of weeks was like, what the fuck are we going to do?
Yeah.
Like there's no savings.
I mean,
here.
You've been fortunate to not only come out of that, but then to be as successful as you are, because so many businesses fell because of COVID.
It was a shit show.
And so much was out of their control.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't open.
So we're like, okay, let's take a step back. Let's figure out what the fuck we're going to do. And, first thing we did was went to our salary. We obviously had to furlough the hourlies. And we go to our salary team, guys, we have an idea. We're going to do takeout only, but we need you to take pay cuts. And everybody took a haircut on their salary to make it work, because at the point nobody else had jobs. Like there was no other job you can get.
It wasn't like, no, you're not going to cut me down. I'll go down the street. There was no down the street to go.
So, and thankfully, we obviously were able to pay them those backed wages after PPP was announced and all that stuff. But like, thankfully they trusted, and we were just brand new owners there. Like, we had one of our chefs, David, who's still with us. He came with us from our first restaurant, but he was the only one that came with us. And we, everybody else took a shot in the dark on us, like saying, hey, we're going to cut your salaries, but I promise, we're going to make it work.
That's a leap of faith.
It was, really and all of them are still with us today, which is amazing. And, without that team getting us through that 9 weeks or whatever that we were doing takeout only, like it would have, nothing would have worked. So we did takeout only, and we just said, you know what, fuck it. Let's use this as an opportunity to redirect the brand, the clientele, everything about Prezzo, because when we actually reopen for business, we can just say, this is the new Prezzo.
Yeah.
And people are going to have to accept it because COVID happened. And like, so we're like, maybe this can, work in our benefit that we had to close dining inside and come out the other side and reopen.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we
like
looked
a sparkling new coat of paint.
Yeah. So we did some minor renovations to the restaurant and brought back some of the team that we knew would help bring us to that next level.
Yeah.
And then hired some that, we thought would continue to bring us to that new level. And
mix of old and new. And then, you get those customers coming back, be like, I'm so glad you're back, and stuff like that. And
that period of takeout that we did built up so much goodwill in the community, because we were so cheap there that we like doing $40 family style meals for people, like just to keep everybody working and keep the food fresh, just keep the wheels turning. Like, so it wasn't about making money. It wasn't about anything other than just keeping the wheels turning for everybody that was there. And I think that actually built up a lot of goodwill in the community, so that when it came to reopening with an entire new menu and new staff and all that, like,
why would they not come to your restaurant?
So the support was kind of there immediately. And that's kind of what projected us forward a little bit.
So you have Prezzo's. How many locations do you have? You have two. You have the one in Boca and the one right down the street from our studio here. And you're telling me that, and I thought at first when you told me this before we started, that's kind of crazy. You're trying to have each and every one of your restaurants, with the exception of the two Prezzo's, different concepts. And I thought in my head, I was like, Eddie, are you crazy? But then you explained to me why you like the different concepts. And now I think it's brilliant.
So I go both ways on this situation a lot. And we'll talk, we'll play devil's advocate on both sides of it. But actually, I learned this because I thought the same thing before we opened the second Prezzo.
Stick to what works.
Yeah. And I'm like, we'll open this one up in Palm Beach Gardens. It's a similar demographic. And we'll do the same menu. It'll be identical restaurants, the whole 9 yards. And so that's what we did. But we found out quickly that the, Palm Beach Gardens clientele is completely different than Boca, and, different preferences, whether it be food types or, alcohol, types of drinks that they drink. And like the product mixes were like completely different. What worked up here, what wouldn't work down there. So it was very interesting for us to see. So we're like, okay, we'll have the same name restaurant, maybe have a majority of the core menu similar, but we'll redirect, whether it be specials or this or that to the specific area. That way we can make sure that the guests are leaving this location happy and that location happy. And there's not really much overlap because there's like 40 minutes between the two. So, So we're not getting many people
especially during the time people would be going to dinner. You're hitting that rush hour traffic. Yeah, no thanks.
So like, you're not getting like, oh, I go to the Boca location all the time, I'm going to try this one. Like occasionally someone says, oh, I've been down there, or, I go to...
If anything, it's someone just happens to live in Boca. They're up here. They're like, oh, Prezzo's. Like, yeah, let's check it out. That's usually the only time someone would do that. They're not going to be like, well, let's go to the Palm Beach Gardens location.
Exactly. So it's not just like a something that just, so we're like, fuck it. Let's direct it to the specific community. And that's kind of where we're at today. And what we found has worked the best.
I like that. I mean, you got to almost like a chameleon, blend in with your location and your surroundings. So name drop all your restaurants, and you have one coming up, right? Or one you're just about to open?
So we have the 2 Prezzos. We have Corvina Seafood Grill, which is in East Boca, which we took over in October of 2023.
You originally didn't want to go to Boca, and now you have another Boca.
Yeah, I know.
They suck in.
It's funny. Funny how that all works. And then we just recently opened Eddie and Vinny's Coastal Italian, which is actually in the location of our first restaurant.
Oh, your Pop's place.
Yeah.
That's full circle moment. I love that.
So the guy that we sold it to, obviously, couldn't make it work. And like I said, we'll have a podcast on that, maybe with some other guests.
You know what? They're going to think that you guys cursed that place somehow. Your dad was making all that money. All these other restaurants fall apart. Your dad takes over, crushes it. You guys sell it. They couldn't handle it again. Then you come back as the savior.
It wasn't because they couldn't handle it. It was because of a plethora of other reasons that led to the demise of that restaurant. And there's countless reasons why that restaurant went down.
It rhymes with rid.
And we got rid of him.
If you know, exactly. I didn't even try that. If you know, you know. Some people do know.
So, we actually ended up last April, we're sitting there and I was like, fuck, we had such a successful restaurant here. What are we going to do? Do we want to do it again? Do we want to lease it out? And we had quite a few groups approach us wanting the space, wanting to pay the rent, and they were qualified groups.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, man, if this many people want to come to this space because they knew how successful it was in the past, like, why don't we just do it again? It's our building. Like, let's be in control of our own destiny. So at that point, I ended up buying my father's partner out of the building. So it's now me and my father in the building.
That's cool.
And
from Christmas lights to straight up business partners, dude.
So and then then we put together the idea for what became Eddie and Vinny's. And Eddie and Vinny's was named after my 2 sons. So they're 7 and 4. And that's kind of what brought us to where we're at today. So we opened that this past March, on March 17th. And the first
St. Patty's.
Yeah. Just happened to fall on that day. It was
an Italian spot opening up on a Irish holiday.
It was a Monday, and we didn't even think that much about it, but like we wanted to get open, and we're like,
let's
fuck
do
it.
It
is what it is. I'm not going to wait till the next Monday. So, we've been open a little bit over a month now, and it's been heartwarming to come back to our original location, see a lot of our old clientele come back, and like, just say, oh my God, we missed you guys. And we love that you're back. And we like to know that we had an impact, that big of an impact at that restaurant over the years, like has made me realize over the past month that like we made the right decision coming back to like our original home base. And like, it's so cool to kind of see all that. And we were a part of a ton of people's important moments, whether it be like engagements or christenings or weddings or bar mitzvahs, anniversaries, like just so many different things that we've done there in the past that like, people held near and dear to their heart. And, fortunately those people still live out there and it's been a super warm welcome. And the fifth one, which is under construction, came out of nowhere. It was actually one of the first opportunities I went after selling Tavolino's the first time. So it was a restaurant in the next city over in Parkland that we love the location. And I'm like, man, if we can do something in this spot, it would crush. I approached those people back when we sold Tavolino's and it's like, what'd you guys sell? And they're like, no. And like, they wanted nothing to do with selling. And I'm like, it is what it is. And that's when we found Prezzo and did that. So fast forward 5 years, I get a call from a broker that I randomly met once and he's out of Miami and he's like, hey, Eddie, I know like you're familiar with this area. I've got this restaurant that I saw came up in Parkland.
You were probably like, shut up.
Dude, I'm like, we're already well under construction for Eddie and Vinny's at this point. And I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me. Like this, like timing, like, of course. Like, so I'm like, well, we got to make an offer. Like there's no way I'm going to let somebody else take this space because this was like, the best restaurant space in the middle of a phenomenal city to have a restaurant in. And I'm like, well, let's make an offer. Let's get it tied up. Like whatever we need to do, we need to figure it out because people are going to be, when they find out about this, people are going to be chasing it down. This was my unicorn.
I've been looking for this for a while. I've wanted this.
So, we just went in with an offer immediately, negotiated, got to where we felt comfortable, got to where, and the sellers knew me obviously because
5 years
of the past,
ago, you wanted it.
So they were comfortable with us and we were able to make that happen. And, so like, okay, like looks like we're opening Eddie and Vinny's in March and what we decided to name the new restaurant called Dear Olivia in July. And
what's the reason behind the name?
So my partner in Eddie and Vinny's and Dear Olivia and the hospitality group, Paul Greenberg, was one of the founders of American Social.
Okay.
He had recently left the company and maybe like a year and a half ago. And him and I connected through some mutual friends, started talking, and he's like, I'm not sure what the next thing is. And we're like, let's work together. Let's see if there's any cohesion here. And let's, if the time presents itself and we like working with each other, let's take that walk. And fast forward a little bit, we found this space and we're like, this could be a perfect opportunity to make a restaurant that is like an elevated American place that you can like go and watch a game, but not feel like you're at a sports bar and like any night of the week, approachable food, great drinks, all that kind of stuff. And like, that's right in his wheelhouse. So we're like, let's do that. And he had this idea for naming like a speakeasy, Dear Olivia. Olivia is his daughter.
Okay.
And we have Eddie and Vinny's, which is named after my kids. So originally the idea was like, we had a couple different ideas for names and like generic names and whatnot. And eventually I'm like, dude, why don't we like just keep on this, like, this path of like naming things, like, keeping it personal.
I like that.
I'm like, why don't we do Dear Olivia? And he's like, do you like that? I'm like, yeah. Like me and Christina.
It also stands out.
Yeah. And so me and Christina were both like, yeah, absolutely. Like this is like, Parkland is a very inclusive city. Everybody, it's very personal there. You're not getting transient people. So having that personal touch on a restaurant and knowing that ownership's there and it's his daughter's namesake, like, it's just what's needed in that area. So, thankfully him and I met and I said, you know what, fuck it. Let's do this space. Now that he's with us, we have the bandwidth to say, let's open a restaurant 2 months after opening another restaurant. And otherwise I would be like,
you'd be panicking.
I would, it would.
I mean, that'd be
tough.
that's a big bite to, to chew on. So, I mean, the fact that you're able to do that is awesome, man.
Yeah, it was a lot, but like I said, the space is perfect, and we felt that it was as much offensive as it was defensive, because another Italian restaurant could have went there and could have affected our business over at Ian Vinny's, because it's 10 minutes from there.
Yeah.
So we're like, you know what? Let's do this one, and
let's make it work and not compete with ourselves.
Exactly.
Well, Eddie, this has been absolutely awesome, man. I'm so happy for your success. I'm glad that I got a chance to meet you. I want to try each and every one of your restaurants. And is there anything else you want to get out there before we wrap up?
No, just come out and check out all the restaurants. I'd be happy to have you there. And it's a wild business, and I'd love to come back and go deeper into it.
100%. You're welcome back anytime, and you've made this business your bitch so far. So congratulations.
Working on it.
Keep up the good work, and you can check out Under Pressure wherever you get your podcast. Tell your friends about it. Make sure your friends go check out all of Eddie's restaurants. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it.